It's the top of the hour, time for the top bulletin in town. Ahead. Right. Monica Kimani's family's pain dwells amid questions.
I wouldn't want it to happen to anyone.
And a new revelation in the gruesome murder. Find out who the DNA results are pointing at. Also tonight,
I promise you and I swear before God, you try that again and you'll see what is going to happen to you.
Corruption has hit maize farmers and the president is angry at his officials. Also ahead, the referendum divide widens.
The time to look at our constitution is now. William Ruto has no choice but to follow.
That is unacceptable.
A game of politics or policy. Plus, county water wars and a high-level battle.
Na ule governor anatisha atafunga Nairobi maji. Amejenga kwa road reserve hapa Nairobi. Ukifunga na maji ya Nairobi, hey, my friend.
Does Murang'a own Nairobi's water?
NTV Tonight with Mark Masai.
Good evening. Glad we could have you with us flying solo tonight, but I have David Agondoa with me as our sign language interpreter. Top story. DNA results from samples picked from the late Monica Nyawera Kimani's apartment last month link prime murder suspect Joseph Kuria Irongo, aka Joey, to the scene of murder. Monica's father and brother say they are so far satisfied with the progress of the investigations and have denied claims that their daughter amassed a lot of wealth from prominent persons in South Sudan. They spoke to NTV's Senatorial at their Thika home in Kiambu County.
Investigations into Monica Nyawera Kimani's brutal murder continue to reinforce police suspicion that Joseph Kuria Irongo, alias Joey, is the main murder suspect. Results of DNA analysis on samples collected from the house of the slain businesswoman positively placed Joseph Kuria Irongo at the crime scene. The DNA tests were carried out on semen found in the victim and under her nails and have confirmed that Joseph Irongo was in fact at the crime scene on the material day and time. Detectives say that it is now confirmed beyond reasonable doubt that Joey was involved in the crime. The DNA report presented to the Directorate of Criminal Investigations headquarters will be presented by the prosecution as part of the evidence implicating the murder suspect in the murder of the young woman.
Yes.
The bereaved family is so far satisfied with the progress of the investigations and expects the courts to grant their departed justice.
It's a blogger.
25-year-old George Thiru Kimani, the late Monica's younger brother, who first discovered the body of his lifeless sister at her residence, says he is still haunted by what he saw at the crime scene.
I actually don't have the words to explain the feeling and maybe whatever I saw, because it's something that I keep on saying I wouldn't want it to happen to anyone.
George lived and worked with the elder sister while running their family business in South Sudan as the operations manager, while the late Monica was the company's managing director. The late Monica's father, Bishop Paul Ngarama, has refuted claims that his daughter obtained immense wealth from prominent personalities in South Sudan. Ngarama says negative publicity on social media is adding salt to injury for the family, which buried their daughter barely a month ago.
They could give her about those tenders, small tenders, through the company, Midi Paul. So she could do better. She could come. We could supply this PVC for the ceilings and the tiles and also the tiles and the carpets.
The family that was already planning to host a birthday party for their daughter on 10th October is now left to contemplate her short life and its brutal end.
The late Monica Nyawera Kimani was last seen here at her parents' house 2 weeks before her brutal murder in Kilimani, Nairobi County. Monica had planned to visit her parents as soon as she arrived from Dubai, where she had planned to go for holiday. However, fate would not allow that to happen, and instead the family, which was supposed to celebrate Monica Kimani's 29th birthday here in Nairobi is instead left with fond memories of their daughter, who they describe as hardworking, loving and caring. Seth Olale, NTV, Thika.
Our thoughts are with the family of the late Monica Kimani, even as investigations continue. And speaking of thoughts, let us be mindful, as you've heard from the family itself, as they grieve the loss of their loved one, in what we share, especially on social media, in the name of the untold story. To another story today, President Uhuru Kenyatta has issued a stern warning to officials of the National Cereals and Produce Board against pilfering money set aside to pay maize farmers. Maize farmers from the Rift Valley have been complaining about unpaid dues running into billions of shillings, yet they made deliveries to NCPB depots. Our reporter Mel Miendo is on this story. Mel, what exactly did the president say?
Mark, a tough-talking President Uhuru Kenyatta was very direct in his message to NCPB officials who have been accused of embezzling funds that were meant to pay the maize farmers. This was the president's unerring warning.
I promise you and I swear before God, you try that again and you'll see what is going to happen to you. Sisi hatutaki mchezo tena, kwa sababu tumeona yale ambayo mmefanya, na wale ambao walifanya tutawafuata.
Now, farmers are demanding billions of shillings owed to them for their crop, but that money ended up in the pockets of unscrupulous traders, even though it was actually available to them, as the president notes.
Alienda na wakaanza kulipa matajiri na wengine uko matraders, wakamaliza pesa kwa traders badala ya kulipia ule mkulima ambaye ametoa jasho.
Just a week ago, Devolution Cabinet Secretary Eugene Wamalwa announced that 1.4 billion Kenya shillings had already been disbursed to the Agriculture Ministry for processing and disbursement for the maize farmers. Now, the farmers were to get their pay starting this week, but at a meeting with senators in Eldoret, the farmers complained of the government's empty promises, and they gave quite an emotional appeal for them to get their dues. Listen in.
Nilikuwa na calculate, nikaangalia, nikasema tunapanda eka moja kwa kiasi ya shilingi 35,000, 30 to 35,000. Cost of production kwa kunia moja ni hiyo 2,000. And somebody is mentioning the other day kwamba kunia ya mahindi ni 1,600. Are we really Kenyans?
Tulienda na wamama na wengine wale tulitoka Gurgun, kufika huko tunaambiwa machine haiwajui, inajua majina lakini ninyi si wakulima because haijasema mnalima nini. Ili ni force nikuje mimi nichukue Otieno here mpaka Mosori aende athibitishe kuwa sisi ni wakulima. Even after then hatukupewa phosphate because mpaka iingizwe kwa system. And you know what happens at the end of the day? We have to corrupt.
In August 2018, the EACC revealed money that was meant to pay the farmers, which was stolen with the help of NCPB employees. Now, there was a list of those who were taken to court as having irregularly benefited from that scheme. Celestine Chepchirchir, who allegedly supplied maize at the Eldoret depot, received 294 million shillings. Her sister, Caroline Chepchumba, was paid 223 million, while the mother, Victoria Jebet, allegedly received 94 million shillings. Stephen Kiprob, who allegedly supplied maize at the Kitale depot, got about 240.6 million, while New Progressive FCS revealed 149.2 million for supplying bags to the Eldoret depot. Paul Kipiego received 89.7 million, Alice Wanjiko received 89.6 million, Simon Kipkoske was paid 80.9 million. These all being paid almost 20 irregular payments made by NCPB. In August 2018, NCPB Managing Director Newton Terrer, together with 5 top directors and 59 other officials, were suspended and they were investigated in that purge. Eldoret's Moi Bridge, Kitale, Nakuru, Bungoma and Kisumu are some of the NCPB depots that have been under investigation. Mark.
Thanks, Mel, for that update. And on to another would call it something that's picking up momentum. That is not quite a dialogue, but it is something that is dividing those across the political divide. ODM leader Raila Odinga has waded into the referendum debate, saying the drive to change the constitution was or is inevitable. Odinga, who was in Migori County vote hunting for the party's candidate for the senatorial contest, says changes to the constitution will fix most of the problems facing the country, and a referendum will happen at the opportune time.
The political drumbeats calling the nation to the idea to make changes to its supreme law are getting louder. ODM leader Raila Odinga was standing his ground that current challenges facing the country and government could only be fixed through a referendum, and this was only a matter of when, not if.
Nobody can stop an idea whose time has come. The time to look at our constitution is now.
Swali ni kwamba ni kitu gani kimeharibika kutoka mwaka 2010 na sasa 2018 ambacho kinahitaji tubadilishe katiba yetu, na ile ya Kenyatta ya kuchukua uhuru tulikaa nayo karibu miaka 40.
The referendum question has been the latest source of divisive political banter between those for and against constitutional amendments. Odinga, however, says the constitution left room for reviews from time to time.
But the new constitution, like many other new constitutions all over the world, requires to be looked at after 80 years of experimentation, so that we can preserve what is working and correct what is not working properly for our people.
Leaders allied to Deputy President William Ruto have, however, opposed these calls. They say the venture would be too costly and would be ill-timed. ODM legislators who support their party's leader's position have hit out at the Deputy President and his allies for rejecting the referendum proposals.
If Kenyans decide to change the constitution through a referendum or otherwise, William Ruto has no choice but to follow.
But within the NASA fold, not everyone is on board the referendum train.
Tutengeneze nafasi ya rais na manaibu wawili. Tutengeneze nafasi ya waziri mkuu na manaibu wawili. Watu sita.
They now feel the same constitution is not beneficial to Kenyans, and they want to use the 8% tax Kenyans are paying to go again for a referendum. That is unacceptable.
ODM says people should be given an opportunity to decide for themselves whether they want these changes, but some leaders argue the time was not yet ripe. Leila Mohammed, NTV.
We'll definitely be keeping an eye on this story, as it's not about to stop. Only thing is we'll be getting more reactions to it. Now, the transfer of 85 teachers holding elective positions within the Kenya National Teachers Union, NUT, is at the very core of the tussle that has brought disharmony between the teachers union and its employer, the Teachers Service Commission, or TSC. And following the botched talks between the two parties yesterday in Naivasha on a number of contentious issues, a teacher strike is now looming just a fortnight to the national examinations. NTV's Zainab Ismail has more.
The make-or-break talks between the Kenya National Union of Teachers and TSC have been pushed 2 weeks ahead after their 5-day consultative forum in Naivasha hit a snag following serious disagreements on demands fronted by the Teachers Union.
So we have given them 2 weeks. Let them come back with answers. And without answers, consequences are very dire. That you know. Very dire. For now we are civil. Very dire consequences.
According to NUT, among the thorny issues the two parties had on the table are promotion of teachers upon attainment of higher qualification, delocalization of teachers, transfer of teachers, performance appraisals, teachers' professional development, and policy developments by the Commission. But at the heart of these discussions was the issue of the transfer of 85 head teachers holding union positions, which the NUT wants revoked, saying TSC has violated the constitution and labour laws by dismantling family units and the administrative structures of the union.
And these are very serious issues. You destroy the families and destroy the union. And this we will never cede even an inch in ensuring that it is remedied.
Sosion threatening of dire consequences should the issues they have raised fail to be addressed.
We are a free and independent union that cannot be micromanaged nor suffocated by an employer. And I think the big issue that is coming out here is savage attack on the rights of a union and the rights of members by a rogue employer.
The Teachers Service Commission on Wednesday rejected the demand, with the Commission's Chief Executive Officer Nancy Macharia asserting that transfers are inevitable and nothing would change that. Through a statement, she explained that the transfers ensure there is equal distribution of teachers across the country. Sosion has further accused TSC of applying diversionary tactics to evade discussing the issue of promotion of teachers, which he says is essential.
Promotion of teachers shall not be evaded. That one, it shall have to be done. Delocalization and punitive transfers, which constitutes bullying, must stop. That one has to stop.
More than 1,500 teachers have already been moved since January.
We've raised these issues. The medicine is address them. Promote teachers. Avoid delocalization as directed by the head of state. We are wondering, when the head of state pronounces himself on an issue, who is Teacher Service Commission?
Early this year, the NAT Secretary General had issued a strike notice for September 1st, but later shelved it and agreed to a sit-down with TSC to iron out those issues, a meeting that has now seemingly collapsed. And with just a fortnight to the national examinations, fears of a looming strike hang over the process like dark clouds, with the hope that the two parties can thrash out their bone of contention once and for all.
When teachers are happy.
Zainab Ismail, NTV.
From that nut TSC tussle, let's wade into another growing tussle between the Nairobi and Murang'a administrations. Mike Mbuvi Sonko has warned his Murang'a counterpart Mwangi wa Iria against pursuing a 25% payment from revenue collected from the sale of water to Nairobi residents. Sonko says his government does not owe the people of Murang'a anything, as the land belongs to Nairobi with a title deed in its possession to prove it. He says that, in addition, the county government compensated the residents who had, prior to the construction of the Ndakaine Dam, lived on the parcel of land. Charity Mwangi reports.
Murang'a County has been a battlefield following demands by the local leaders led by County Governor Mwangi wa Iria on account of a resource that they hold dear. They want to be paid for the water supplied to Nairobi County. Nairobi Governor Mike Sonko thinks not.
Maji ya Nairobi yanatoka kwa milima ya Aberdares. 84% of the water ile tunapata Nairobi inatoka Aberdares kwa milima pande ya Nyandarua, na kama kuna mwanasiasa angepiga kelele ni huyu waziri Kiunjuri na governor wa Nyeri.
The Nairobi governor is the latest senior official to enter the water debate that has the Murang'a governor making new demands for pay for water and running a very public quarrel with Water and Sanitation Cabinet Secretary Simon Chelugui over revenues and access to the water.
We have seen ballast and sand used to block access to offices of water and sewerage companies in Murang'a. These are criminal activities.
Nairobi Governor Mike Mbuvi Sonko says his Murang'a counterpart wa Iria is playing politics with a basic human right of city dwellers, some of whom hail from the county he represents. Sonko says that whatever debt Nairobians owed Murang'a have already been paid in full.
Na kando na Ndakaini Dam, Nairobi City County Government bado iko na stakabadhi za Ruiru Dam, Thika Dam, kule Gatundu Ngetu mahali umezaiwa Mheshimiwa Rais. Na maji ni uhai.
The Murang'a governor is backed by MCAs in his county and he has new support.
Ile sababu tulipeana kwamba hatuwezi kuwani damu itengenezwe hapa ya Kivu hapa, ile high ground force, alafu yeye kasaidia watu Tanariva na watu wa Garissa na watu wa huko karibu Mombasa. Sisi hapa tubaki, shida yetu ni kwa mahama tukihamisha nyumba zetu na kuna kitu tumepata. Hiyo ndio vitu tunafanya magavana waseme tunataka hali maji inatoka, watu wa pale wasaidike kwanza, ndio wapeane ile cooperation ya mradi ya maji kufanya.
The issue of the waters in Murang'a and the funds from Nairobi, no side to the disagreement appears willing to cede ground. Charity Mwangi, NTV.
With only one day of campaigns left before Migori constituents go to the polls to elect a senator, the Orange Democratic Movement put its best foot forward, with party leader Raila Odinga hitting the trail. And in an effort to convert the undecideds, the ODM party leader, who campaigned for Ochilo Ayako on Thursday, framed the election as a test of dominance between Odinga and Deputy President William Ruto. ODM's Director of Elections, Junet Mohammed, accused the Deputy President William Ruto, who recently described Odinga as an untrustworthy conman, of backing Ayako's opponent, Eddie Gesheru Okech, who is running on a federal party ticket. The 27-year-old Okech, who has denied receiving financial support from the Deputy President, also has the support of Solomon Hondo, a candidate who dropped out of the race on Monday, bringing the number of contestants to 5. Prior to his arrest on a murder charge, Migori Governor Okoth Obado also campaigned against Ochilo Ayako.
Hello? Nimesikia chema na kitaja jina ya Ruto, damu yangu ikachemuka. Nikasema siwezi kukaa. Hii vita ambayo tuko naye hapa Migori ni kati ya ODM na William Ruto. Wale wamekuja hapa kukampeni na machopa. Chopa yao ni ya William Samoei Arap Ruto. Sisi tunataka kuonyesha William Ruto kwa uchaguzi ya kwamba yeye ni mtu mdogo sana.
In a move that is expected to generate heat in Parliament, the Orange Democratic Movement plans to kick out members of NASA-affiliate parties from parliamentary committees. In a letter to the Speaker, ODM presents a list of 50 names that the party wants removed from House committees and replaced by ODM legislators. Other ODM MPs will be reshuffled in a move that's also seen as targeting the rebels within.
On behalf of the leader of Majority Party,
next week, Wednesday's afternoon session in Parliament promises to be heated if the House Business Committee agrees to include in the order paper a motion seeking to make changes in the membership of House committees that could see non-ODM legislators within the NASA umbrella lose some of these coveted positions. Wiper's Gideon Mulyongi, who is also Mwingi Central MP, will be de-whipped from the Public Investments Committee. ANC's Tindi Mwale, MP for Butere, will also be removed from the Public Investments Committee. ANC's Christopher Aseka, MP for Huisero, will be removed from the Budget and Appropriations Committee. Bungoma Women Rep Catherine Wambilianga of Ford Kenya will lose her place in the Member Service and Facilities Committee. ANC's Sakwa Bunyasi, MP for Nambale, will be removed from the Public Accounts Committee. Hamisi MP Charles Gimose of Ford Kenya will be removed from the Delegated Legislation Committee. Sylvans Osoro, an independent MP, will be removed from the Defense and Foreign Relations Committee. Kwanza MP Ferdinand Wanyonyi of Ford Kenya will be removed from the Trade, Industry and Cooperatives Committee. Kabuchai's James Mukwe of Ford Kenya will also be removed from the National Government CDF Committee, while Kitui Central's Makali Mulu will be removed from the Selection Committee. Those in the list and are from ODM have been moved to other committees.
The sad part of it is that I'm a member of the Selection Committee, but this thing was done secretively. Even the clerk was told not to send me a text message inviting me for the meeting. And therefore everything has been under the carpet until when the majority leader, Honorable Duale, called me and told me that this is the way things are.
The MP says the move goes against the spirit of the NASA coalition and has written to the Speaker to withdraw the list as presented, arguing no consultation was done within the respective parties.
When we were dividing the committee slots in NASA, we decided on a formula according to the party strength. And therefore, I'm not understanding why ODM is coming out to grab even positions that belong to Wiper and belong to ANC.
Section 176 of the Standing Orders provides for a political party to accord a member it wishes to de-whip an opportunity to be heard before such an action is taken. But those targeted say they haven't been offered any such opportunity.
We are asking our brothers in ODM to tell us the reason. If there is no NASA coalition, they should come out clearly and tell us that there is no NASA coalition.
I'm not changing any of that, any of my position in regard to the finance bill. Even if it was to be voted tomorrow, I'll still do the same thing. I'll still say no, even if it were to be voted tomorrow. And if it's about William Ruto, I'm again not changing.
Members on that list have been up and down lobbying, trying to make sure that that list does not find its way on the floor of the House. But sources tell us that it has been slated for Wednesday afternoon next week. Kennedy Mureithi, NTV at Parliament Buildings.
From Parliament Buildings, we take a break here on NTV Tonight. When we come back, we'll have an exclusive conversation with the EACC CEO, Halake Wako, who was hard-pressed by Trevor Mbija to tell whether his mandate has been a success or a failure. You'll be the judge of that when we come back. Stay with us. Welcome back. Tonight, NTV can exclusively report that the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission is still on the trail of all the officers involved in the NYS1 scandal that led to the loss of 791 million shillings, including Kirinyaga Governor Anne Waiguru, who claims to have written to the anti-graft body to clear her name publicly. EACC CEO Halake Wako says no one will be cleared just yet, even after a Gazette notice stating that suspect Josephine Kafura may have lied in her affidavit implicating Anne Waiguru. NTV's Trevor Mbija spoke to the EACC CEO Halake Wako exclusively on the war against graft and the public's dwindling confidence in the EACC.
flash back to 2015 and the NYS scandal came up. There was a loss of 791 million shillings. In fact, the president himself addressed you directly on this.
Wewe wako wewe. Ulinisimamisha hapo mbele ya bunge. Nikafuta mawaziri na nani ambao sasa wananilaumu. They hate me. Wengine wana campaign against me. Na wewe ndio uliniambia hii watu wako. Mpaka wa leo, this is 2 years. Hujaniambia where their guilt is.
Did you mislead the president?
No, I did not, and I will not. I have never. And if I did, and looking at my responsibility, I would have not continued to serve in my capacity where I am today. It would have been very clear to me that it's not a situation where I continue serving. But the thing is that we may not have understood each other at the moment. On that material day when we were discussing issues, it was how our forum was handled. Probably that made us not understand how we were sharing information at that particular time. Otherwise, I want to tell you one thing. In that year, we had the 124 files that we were investigating actively, that we had discussed very prominently across the country. But out of that, we had generated over 350 cases or files, which many of which have ended up in court. And out of this, whether at the national or county levels, we have over 1,000 people before the courts of law across the country. So we cannot talk about facts which are not supported, or which we cannot go to court and support, as the evidence that we gather must stand before the court of law.
Now that we're speaking about evidence, and let's stay with the NYS 1 matter for a bit. What is the status of the current Kirinyaga governor, Anne Waiguru, who was then the devolution CS?
There were many individuals that we had investigated. And you can also recall that we took over 27 people to court. And the Kirinyaga governor was one of the people who have been investigated, and still we are analyzing some of the information that relate to that matter of the NYS 791, or the first NYS case. So we are still clarifying our points. We are still checking where we are told that something goes somewhere. But we cannot take any individual to court unless we have a tangible evidence against that particular individual. But we are still in the process of compiling that, because it's a very voluminous and laborious process.
Is she still a person of interest according to
anybody within that ministry at that particular time, including a few more who served later on, still remain persons of interest. And until we are through with the process, and until we say that we've also filed matters in court for recovery purposes, we cannot say that somebody is part of that problem or not, until we have the clear, tangible evidence against every individual.
She says a lawyer has written to you 6 times to have a clear public.
In an investigation process, we also have a back and forth. Go back to the field, check what is there, verify information that is brought to us today, compare with what we had before. Writing to us 6 times may be factual or may not be. I don't want to struggle with that. I do not want to struggle with that.
Have you seen any letters?
I have seen some maybe, but I have not seen the 6 times or the announcements that I hear through the media. So that I really do not want to struggle with.
But even after seeing the one that you said you haven't cleared the public.
We will not go by an individual pressure in responding to any particular case. We will only be informed, and we can only be informed by investigations output and outcome, which we eventually progress to the next level. So if everybody is to write to us and put pressure, then we will not be able to achieve the work that is before us in its proper sense. So we have to follow the procedures. So a particular individual's pressure is outside that procedure.
All these policies that you keep mentioning, there are still more than 27 people who are acquitted of crimes of planning to defraud or commit economic crimes. They were acquitted from the court because of lack of evidence.
I don't believe
that a failure from
I do not believe it's a lack of evidence. That's why that matter is in the Court of Appeal. So let's wait and see how it progresses there.
So according to you, believe
as far as we are concerned, we had clear evidence, watertight, and that's why we progressed. And remember, when we investigate matters, we compile files at EACC level. The office of the DPP is also another independent institution which looks at all these files with independent eyes and establishes whether actually what we have set out as evidence is sufficient and good enough to progress to court, or sometimes not sufficient, and therefore we look at alternative ways of dealing with matters that have come to us. So it cannot just pass from us to DPP and all the way to courts and be declared of not sufficient enough to sustain prosecution. That's why the matter is before the Court of Appeal.
Do you read the malice in the judiciary system?
I don't want to say that. We are in court. Let's listen to the next stage.
Which is the weakest link institution, if you may, because you've mentioned the DPP, the EACC. Which is the weakest link in your own observation? Where are you failing?
You see, the chain in this particular instance has so many of us. It has the investigators or the investigating agencies. It has the prosecuting agency. It has the adjudicating agency. Sometimes you may not directly say the whole institution has a problem. Individuals can be problems within each of these institutions. There could be a magistrate which might be a problem. There can be a judge who at one instance might be a problem, but the entire or a prosecutor at one time, or an investigator. You cannot say judiciary as a whole is a failure, the prosecution as a whole is a problem, the investigating agency as a whole is useless. You cannot say that. Like any other process of conducting activities, there can occur some hitch here and there.
And speaking of hitches, just last week, EACC published a Gazette notice which acknowledges that a suspect in NYS1 may have lied in an affidavit. In fact, the word used, and I quote, are EACC and DCI noted that allegations made were bereft of truth. In hindsight, what was not done properly when it comes to NYS1?
In investigations process, you might, even towards the tail end of what you are doing, you discover something bigger that you may not have identified in the middle of the course of your work, and therefore you go back and do all this.
What did you miss in NYS1?
So I cannot identify directly what we missed, probably because of the nature of the problem then, and the complexity of the NYS problems. There may be one or two things that needed a bit more attention. So where we find that we require more attention, we always go back and give more attention as due and complete the process.
So is NYS1 still an open case?
Any investigation that we find that there's something that requires going back to clarify will always remain that.
Last week, EACC released a report, and page 40 of your own report, which I'm holding here, the National Ethics and Corruption Survey, shows that 54.5% of the respondents you interviewed believe EACC is not effective in the fight against corruption. That is more than half of Kenyans. Kotu has come out to say that EACC should be disbanded. The president himself left out EACC when he praised the DPP and other agencies for fighting graft. In your own view, do you think EACC should be disbanded?
EACC should not be disbanded. In fact, if you identify a problem, whether it is an individual or the entire people of Kenya, should not talk about if an institution has a problem, rush to disbanding it. If an institution has a particular problem, identify and find ways of dealing with the problem. The fact that Kenyans say that they may not understand fully what it is does not also represent that Kenyans are dismissing EACC.
This is your own report, 54.5%. That is more than half of Kenyans.
Because these are the same Kenyans, if you ask more, they tell you that, yes, we wanted people to be prosecuted and jailed. But they do not understand the fact that EACC's responsibility is to investigate matters and also educate them, the public itself, in fighting corruption. But what they expect is us to investigate, arrest, take people to court and jail. What we have been telling them very clearly is that, yes, our responsibility is to make sure that these people arrive in court, push every evidence and sustain the case in court, and work hard to secure conviction.
Let's turn the focus to EACC itself and yourself as the CEO actually. On the 29th of June this same year, a former EACC investigator who's called Adan Moro Guracha filed an affidavit in the Labor Relations Court accusing you of single-handedly scuttling the probe into NYS1 by receiving more than 300 million shillings.
This is a matter in court, and therefore I don't want to discuss this matter because we've filed our responses in court. However, an investigation process requires so many people, and an investigation in EACC has various teams to undertake. I cannot at one time direct to stop any investigations without following the due process of any investigation within the law. But even if one is to be indulged in a bad process, do you think somebody whose volume of thread was the 700 will give out 300 and remain with what? That person.
But you said there could be more money than the 700.
They cannot be. It's even unrealistic. But let me not talk about this because we are defending, and I'm clearly defending myself in court.
Let's talk about the former governor, Evans Kidero. He's suing EACC for harassment. Is it practical for EACC to arrest him and then go back and look for papers? Isn't it supposed to be the other way around? Have evidence and then come and arrest someone?
It's practical that investigate an individual or an entity, collect information, compile a report, take the file to go through the DPP. But it is also possible that the same individual has other cases for which we are looking for another piece of information different from the one that we've already taken to court. So there's nothing strange here, there's nothing new as far as that particular issue is concerned. The fact that we investigate an individual on one matter and arrive in court does also not close him from various other investigations.
Okay. Let's talk about asset recovery now. In June, EACC said that you are looking to recover assets worth 8.6 billion shillings. How far have you gone with that recovery?
An assets recovery process is a continuous process.
But how
First
far
of
have you
all,
gone?
investigations usually take quite a very long period of time. We have assets as it stands today. For the last 5 years that I've been there, we've recovered assets worth over 3.7 billion shillings, and we have more than assets that we have filed in courts. That was that month, but by this month, by today, I have assets 388 cases filed in court for the purposes of recovering assets, and this is assets estimated to be worth over 10.3 billion shillings.
And speaking of asset recovery, the Ruaraka land case still remains unresolved. In fact, the allegations that it's taking so long because it involves the high and mighty in the society. Where's the delay from?
I don't want to say that there is a delay. I just want to say that like any other investigation, it's taking its time to mature, and we are on the usual back and forth of investigation and verification
Have you
processes.
got any resistance from the high and mighty?
We do not have any resistance, and we are only working to clarify some of the points that we think needs further clarification as we head to court.
The EACC officials were involved in certain issues around corruption. Are you investigating anyone in the EACC?
Wherever, you know, on a number of occasions we hear that an EACC officer is mentioned. Sometimes a prosecutor is mentioned, sometimes a judiciary official is mentioned. But in our case, when it is an officer who is an EACC officer, we always have our ways of dealing with that. We have an internal control and investigation mechanism. We have individuals whose task is just to observe activities of various individuals within the commission. And we have a record that even for the last 6 years I've been there, we've investigated a few individuals and vetted them out of the commission.
So you've received complaints against some of your officers in your work?
Every day you see, like many other institutions, you hear, even through the media, somebody writing this, saying that, and we take it seriously.
And so far, graft seems to have devolved to the counties now, where some governors become overnight billionaires. What is the EACC's plan to tame graft in all the 47?
We have over 500 staff from counties, actually, before various courts of law, and that number is growing, like the ones at the national level. So we have that, and we also have a plan to increase the numbers of our regional offices and staffing establishment within those regional offices. Before the end of this year, we are adding 3 more, and we are increasing more numbers of investigators and lawyers that deal with, and the education officers who deal with our matters at that level.
Do you think Bible study could help in the fight against graft?
One of the problems that we can clearly see bedeviling our country is the erosion of our national values and even individual values. And where does a value or inculcating of value emanate from? Isn't it from family level, from religion and religious support, from society and the cultural perspectives that helps shape up an individual as the individual grows? So if Bible is an instrument that is used to inculcate the same, can't it be one of the tools that can be deployed to provide the matters of support in enhancing values, especially inculcating individual values?
It's a waste of time and money, because you can't even, how do you measure the success of the Bible study program that EACC has launched?
We are in partnership with the Interreligious Council of Kenya, where every religion is represented.
But how do you measure the success?
The success in such like situation may not be an examination where you go and sit people down and test them and carry your marks off head or off that side that particular time. It is where you will see people's change in behavior, change in their conduct. So it may not be your only way of, or our only way of dealing with it, but we see that there is merit in working with religious organizations also to fight issues of value erosion for the people of Kenya.
But even in your own recommendation on the report that just came out from the National Ethics and Corruption Survey released on Monday, the recommendation says, and I quote, strengthen the laws to ensure cases are handled promptly and harsher sentences meted out on the culprits. It doesn't say anything about religion.
Let me tell you one thing. The recommendation that we heighten our process of strengthening laws and how we conduct law enforcement is definitely looking at a foremost role of our institution, where we are tasked with law enforcement to fight corruption. That is, investigate and take matters to court or prosecute. But at the same time, we also have responsibility of public education as a core or integral part of the mandate of the commission.
And as we come to an end, in your 6 years of experience at the EACC, what is the one thing you'd change to strengthen the institution even more?
I really want us to have enhanced legal framework, enhanced resource input, and enhanced support from the public and public participation, which is quite crucial.
Right, and finally, in 6 years, what do you say is your greatest achievement?
When I took over, I had 260 or so staff. Today I'm living at about 800 or so. Then I have also had very old facilities and equipments, especially for investigators. When I took over today, we have most modern equipments, including a forensic lab, which is conducting quite a number of our activities. I have enhanced the skill of my staff as I progress. As I live, we are launching an integrity academy, in fact, in the next 2 weeks. But above all, the year I took over, we had very few cases concluded in court. And this year, we so far have had 49 cases concluded in court with 39 convictions.
Should we expect bigger convictions before you leave?
I believe so. In the next few months that I'm there, we'll get more. That's my prayers, because we have very many cases before the courts across the country.
EACC CEO Halake Wako, thank you so much for making time.
Asante sana.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. Okay.
All said and done, Halake Wako has his work cut out for him. And definitely we'll have this interview posted on our YouTube page. Do you think he has failed or he is succeeding in the fight against graft? You be the judge. It affects us, the Kenyans, most. We'll take a break here at this point. Business News is up next with Dan Mwangi.
Good evening and welcome to NTV Business. I'm Dan Mwangi. Now, companies will have to subject to greater scrutiny transactions with shareholders in light of the provisions of the Finance Act of 2018. This follows the provisions of the new law which amends the Income Tax Act to widen the scope of transactions that can be deemed to be dividends.
And comments?
Dividends are earnings based on one's shareholding in a company, at least until the Finance Act of 2018 came into force. The new law widens the purview of what will be deemed to be a dividend to include any cash or asset distributed by a company to a shareholder or a person related to a shareholder. While this is aimed at helping the government widen its reach for mobilization of revenue, tax consultants opine that it creates a grey area which is likely to put the government and taxpayers at odds.
Practically anything that is paid out of a company could be deemed to be a dividend. So for example, if you owe a debt and in your company which you are a shareholder, or which your significant other, your spouse, is a shareholder, and that company settles your debt, then you will be deemed to have received a dividend.
The widened scope is expected to trickle and have an adverse effect on appetite for certain fixed income securities, potentially decelerating investor activity at the capital market.
Take an example of a company which has invested in an infrastructure bond. The income from an infrastructure bond is tax exempt. Now, when you want to distribute that income to your shareholders, because you did not pay tax on it in the first instance, you will be required to pay 30% tax on that income. So the question then becomes, what is the use of even investing in this infrastructure bond if I have to still pay 30% tax before I distribute?
The Finance Act of 2018 is expected to widen the tax base and rake in more revenue for the government. Stakeholders, however, contend that grey areas regarding the effective date of certain provisions are likely to derail realization of this goal. Julian Samboko, NTV.
Investors at the Nairobi Securities Exchange are blaming government policies for the exodus of foreign investors from the market, a move that has come with the loss of market capitalization and fall in the benchmark index. The investors say adequate stakeholder engagement was not undertaken before the government introduced new taxes such as the capital gains tax and the Robin Hood tax. During the third quarter of the year, the equities market was on a significant downward trend, with the NSE 20, 25 and all share indices declining by 14.2%, 15.6% and 12.5% respectively, while equities turnover declined by 32% to 31.95 billion shillings from 31.95 billion shillings from 46.98 billion in June. Market capitalization stood at 2.2 trillion shillings as at the close of trading on Wednesday, down from about 2.5 trillion shillings in 2017.
What are these taxes? When do they kick in? What is the intention? How much are they? And there's not been enough consultation with the players, and so that has raised a concern. In essence, all of that, what it has generally done is, caused their confidence in our markets to decline.
The National Cereals and Produce Board may be audited to confirm if it indeed is keeping maize that is unfit for human consumption. The National Assembly's Public Investment Committee says it has received a tip-off that a significant portion of the maize in storage at the various depots has gone bad, and it is now calling on the Auditor General, Edward Oko, to audit NCPB. The grain is believed to have been part of what the board brought from farmers this year. Now, PIC says Oko has 10 days to compile a preliminary report on the state of affairs at the board, and if the report reveals that the maize in storage is indeed contaminated, then the committee will recommend that action be taken against the officers involved in purchasing of the grain. The World Bank has reduced its economic growth forecast for sub-Saharan Africa this year to 2.7% from an earlier forecast of 3.1% as the external environment becomes less favorable amid mounting global trade risks and weakening demand for the region's products. The Washington, D.C.-based institution says the slump has been occasioned by the sluggish expansions in the region's three largest economies, Nigeria, Angola, and South Africa. The rest of the countries in the region, including those that do not depend on commodities such as Ivory Coast, Kenya, and Rwanda, the bank said, have been growing steadily. Do you have insurance cover to cater for your funeral costs? Is it too disturbing or morbid to think about, let alone plan for? Well, hear this. Death is the second main household risk factor in Kenya after drought, with the cost of funerals and burials rising. This is according to a survey by the Association of Kenya Insurers and undertaken by Ipsos Kenya. The survey reveals, among other things, that the key barriers to uptake of funeral insurance are mainly cultural. Kenyans culturally avoid talking about death or even desire to plan for it. Nyanza and Western Province communities have been cited as having costly funerals owing to high costs of transport and food over and above other funeral expenses, according to the report. However, Aki says that there is a general consensus from insurance companies that people from Western region are the main clientele of the funeral insurance product. Generally, Funeral costs and expenses are becoming difficult to manage, especially in cases when the breadwinner dies. The umbrella body says that Kenyans should take up the cover for their own good at the time of grieving. The race to control the world's self-driving car market has moved up a gear, with Japanese automobile and aircraft manufacturer Honda and America's General Motors GM announcing major deals. Under the new partnership, Honda is set to invest $2.75 billion and take up a stake in GM's self-driving unit GM Cruise just 4 months after SoftBank invested $2.25 billion in the unit. Meanwhile, Toyota and SoftBank are forming a joint venture called Monet to develop businesses that will use driverless car technology to offer new services such as deliveries, shuttle buses, as well as vehicles that offer onboard medical examinations by 2020. It would be interesting if, for instance, there were matatus or buses that are self-driving. I don't know whether there'd be a sound that makes the hitting sound, yes. Shukisha, shukisha, shukisha. I guess it's my point to shuka this bulletin. Good night, I'm done.
NTV Business News.
Welcome back to NTV Tonight. Now, preparations for my birthday this year in top gear. I'm joking. It's for Mashujaa Day Celebrations, which happens to be my birthday. And the preparations for that are in top gear, and they will be held in Kakamega County, which of course will be the host county. Kakamega Governor Wycliffe Oparanya says all is in place for the historic event that will be graced by President Uhuru Kenyatta. NTV's Zacchaeus Mosame with the story.
The top leadership in the country, led by President Uhuru Kenyatta, is expected to converge at Kakamega's Bohongo Stadium for this year's Mashujaa Day celebrations.
And since it was officially announced that we are going to host the Mashujaa Day, we have had several meetings between with the national government, county government.
Kakamega town is full of activities as different parties tasked with the success of the day rush against limited time to put everything in order. At Bohongo Stadium, final touches on the grounds are underway. Kakamega Governor Wycliffe Oparanya says his county is ready to host the event.
We are now very ready to host the Mashujaa Day. The venue of the meeting, Bohongo Stadium. If you go there, it is we are really ready to host it. You can see the infrastructure around, the setup, the cleanness of the town, the lighting of the town.
The governor says the president's initiative to hold national holidays in different counties is not only meant to boost the local's economy, but also to act as a bridge for national cohesion.
I want to use this opportunity to welcome people for that Mashujaa Day on the 20th, especially the citizens of Kakamega County, to come in large numbers to welcome the president with other dignitaries who will be coming for the occasion.
Now, in a fortnight, Kakamega County, specifically Bohongo Stadium, will be hosting this year's Mashujaa Day celebrations, where President Uhuru Kenyatta will be the chief guest. Now, as preparations continue, the host governor Wycliffe Oparanya says his county government is ready to receive the guests. Zakis Masame, NTV, Kakamega.
And you best believe NTV will be live from Bohongo Stadium, as they would probably call it, on the ground. Yes, speaking of stadiums, there's a lot of news coming from stadiums in terms of sports news with Brian Otwal after the break.
A squad of 11 local-based Harambee Stars players kicked off non-residential training at Utalii grounds in Nairobi ahead of back-to-back 2019 Africa Cup of Nations Group F qualifiers against Ethiopia. Among them, Kakamega Homeboys forward Alan Wanga and Posta Rangers captain Joaquin Sotudo. Stars tactician Sebastian Minye exuded confidence that his side will register a good result against a side that eliminated Kenya from the 2016 CHAN qualifiers. Stars preparations has been beleaguered by usual tales of bungled preparations occasioned by inadequate funding. And now to Kenyatta Stadium, newly crowned KPL champions Gor Mahia ended a 5-match winless streak with a 4-1 thumping of Zoo FC in the only Kenyan Premier League match. Wesley Onguso opened the scoring for Gor Mahia before Michael Madoya leveled for Zoo. However, goals by Jack Tuisenge, Wellington Ochieng and Bernard Ondiek sealed the victory for Kogalo, who now lead the table with 75 points ahead of their final game this season. against Tusker. Zoo remain 11th on the table with 41 points and host Sofapaka in Kericho. Meanwhile, the race to Premier League promotion continues to heat up as KCB cemented their second place position in the NSL standings after a 2-0 win over Coast Steamer. Ushuru also put themselves in the frame of at least a playoff spot when they beat GFE 105 4-0 in Bungoma.
You know, you've got to think about standards, and what's happened is happened, and I always say that you can't rewrite history. We've got to go forward. We can't look backwards. And today it's a good win. You know, that's all I can say about it. It's a good win.
And the national women's volleyball team Malkia Strikers slumped to a crushing 3-0 loss to Dominican Republic in the final FIVB Women's World Championship Group D match in Japan, having only collected a win over Kazakhstan in their opening match and lost to Puerto Rico, Serbia and defending champions Brazil. The Kenyan Queens went down 25-5, 25-7 and 25-15 in a one-sided match. The victory ensured Dominican Republic sail into the tournament's next round on a 2-2 record, while Kenya will now return home. The result left Kenya standing in the second last position in Pool D as table toppers Serbia, Brazil, Dominican Republic and Puerto Rico moved to the tournament's second round. And world record holder and reigning Olympic marathon champion Eliud Kipchoge has said he is doing his part to try and educate up-and-coming athletes about the dangers of doping. Kenya has been hit by a series of positive tests in recent years, with the likes of Olympic marathon champion Jemima Subgong and former 1500 meters Olympic and world champion Asbel Kiprop being banned.
I'll be participating in talking to young professional athletes and those who are in school actually to really love the sport and know that and train to earn actually good results. What makes people to sportsmen to top.
And up to 6,000 athletes are expected to compete in the 10th edition of the Isaiah Kiplagat Memorial Dalat Gar Cross Country, which will be held on the 13th October in Nandi County. For the second year in succession, Olympic champion Eliud Kipchoge will be the race ambassador. There will be a total of 12 categories in the event, including a 2-kilometer fun race for the VIPs, while there will also be a 2-kilometer veterans run with the top 3 getting an AFA each. Other categories include 8-kilometer senior races, 6 kilometers and 8-kilometer junior races. And Cristiano Ronaldo has been left out of the Portugal squad for the upcoming matches against Poland and Scotland amid ongoing rape allegations in the United States. Ronaldo has been accused of rape by Catherine Mayorga, who says the player assaulted her in